What up? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And look at you. You done stumbled upon little OTB Saints, where we bring you all the latest black and gold coverage.
Who are the Saints going to draft? Who's going to be their quarterback? What does the salary cap look like? All that information and more.
Hope you enjoy it. Like, subscribe.
Marshon Lattimore is someone that we talked about, trade rumors leading into the NFL draft. Yep. He was not traded before the draft, but they do select Kool-Aid McKinstry, so maybe signs point to him still being available. I know he's been linked to the Texans and the Chiefs, and just like flight tracker season in college football, it's Instagram-like season in the NFL because Marshon Lattimore, he liked an Instagram post from Bleacher Report showing him as a potential trade candidate to the Texans. Marshon Lattimore is somebody that we've talked about, you know, being available. Now, it would have to be an offer that kind of blew you away. I don't know what that offer would look like now that the draft is over, T. But you drafted Kool-Aid in the second round, traded up to draft Kool-Aid McKinstry in the second round. So this is a situation that feels like it's not even close to being over, and Marshon could actually be on the move.
Yeah, and remember, with the timing of this, like one of the reasons why maybe it didn't happen before the draft is it's a bit of cap manipulation, right? Where I can't remember the exact date, but if he's traded after that date, he's going to count for less against the Saints cap. So the Saints have been incentivized to maybe wait on making this move. Let's look at this quote from Mickey Loomis. It's a bit of a longer one, but quote, "When a guy is a really good player for your team, they're not on the market per se, but there are times when you get a call and somebody makes your proposal and it might make sense for you. That's true for any player on your team. If you get an offer you can't refuse, you have to at least look at it. So that's what I would say. I'm not actively trying to trade Marshon. Marshon's a good player. He's an elite corner. He's had some injuries the last couple seasons that have kept him off the field, and we've got to get over that. It's not his fault. It's just circumstances. That's just where we're at." So as you can see there, Mickey Loomis very open to a potential trade of Marshon Lattimore. And then you look at him liking the post about the Texans. There's been, during all the kind of perceived split of the locker room last year, I feel like if you read between the lines, it felt like Marshon maybe wasn't the biggest fan of DA as the head coach. I don't know what their relationship was like when he was just DC. And then you look at the Texans, Jake, and it becomes interesting because it does make sense for both parties, right? Because the Texans have CJ Stroud on that rookie deal, they feel like they are in that window that everybody tried, even though I think a bit too much is made of this, but that's a different segment. They feel like they are in that window where you have the guy on a rookie deal and you go all in everywhere around him, right? So Marshon Lattimore, whether or not you think he's still elite, is still going to be one of the better starting cornerbacks in the entire league. You bring him to a Texans team that is potentially a contender, make them even better going in on CJ Stroud's window. Like I said, the Saints get some money off the books at a time when they desperately need it, and they gain some resources when we've seen them throughout this offseason, Jake, finally start to prioritize the future and not go all in on the immediate, right? Whether it was some of the deals that they made or didn't make. And so, yeah, I mean, it's not hard to see how this deal would make sense for both sides. I do wonder what that deal actually looks like at the end of the day, right? Because I can't imagine. I mean, I can't imagine that it's even a second rounder, would it? It feels like this would almost be a third round situation.
What if you did a player swap? What if you traded Marshon Lattimore to the Houston Texans for Kenyon Green, who was selected last year in the first, or 2022, I should say, in the first round? He currently right now is not a starting offensive lineman for the Houston Texans. This is somebody with potential. You need offensive line. Would you value someone like Kenyon Green, who was a first-round pick 2 years ago, over a third-round pick that you don't really know who that could end up being?
Well, that's kind of funny, Jake. I guess this kind of goes back to some of your thoughts on first-round picks, right? Like, first-round picks are always going to get more opportunities because they're first-round picks. But, like, do we think is Kenyon Green like Trevor Penny? Like, I got to be honest, I've never thought about him before. Like, is he? Are you just getting a second Trevor Penny, or is the Texans line just too good where he just can't crack that starting lineup?
Well, I mean, your starting guards are Titus Howard, who you selected in the first round in 2019, and then you traded for Shaq Mason, who he's the other starting guard. So you've got really good guards there. So it's not like you've got, you know, 7th round picks that, you know, beat out the 1st round pick situation.
Yeah, so I mean, I would be intrigued by that. I think you would probably still need like a late round pick on the edge of that deal. No, like I don't think you would just go. Would you go straight player swap there if you were Mickey Loomis?
I think you'd have to add something. You would have to add something because you know Marshon Lattimore and what he can be when he's healthy, and he's not. It's not like he's an old player. Like he still has time left in the NFL. So I think you would take the potential of a Kenyon Green because it is such a position of need for you. And then they'd also have to tag a pick with that. And something like, no, I'm not talking about a 7th rounder. You'd have to at least, I feel like a 4th rounder.
5th, 4th. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I like that deal you've created. I can get behind that. And then if you're Houston, you give up a lineman that's not really playing and you give up a later draft pick, but you now have a secondary, a cornerback tandem of Derek Stingley Jr. and Marshon Lattimore. That, as Chris Jarrell points out in the chat, that would be nasty.
Yeah, because the Texans, they've got a couple of former 1st-round picks that they signed, but just not, like C.J. Henderson being one of them, that just not worked out in the NFL. Like, this is C.J. Henderson's at least 3rd spot already in the NFL. And if you're wondering, C.J. Henderson, that name sounds familiar. It's because he's the guy that tossed the cleat for the Florida Gators into the fog that gave you a victory there in the swamp.
Well, and I didn't realize that, dude. Man, I forgot his name was CJ Henderson. I feel like I've never even heard that name. I guess, how would Saints fans feel if this is how Marshon Lattimore's time with the Saints ended? Obviously, there was a time where there was deep love between the Saints or between the fandom and that player. And again, there's no love for Dennis Allen really amongst the fandom, and I think anybody would side with Marshon if that's like what it was kind of about. But it just, I kind of think that people wouldn't care that much, and I think it's interesting that I think it's interesting because it's kind of a testament to how injuries can change a fan base's feeling on a person so quickly, right? After 2 years of not being available, but the secondary still doing pretty good, all of a sudden, it doesn't seem like people are too, it's no longer like, what? You can't trade this guy. It's like, okay, yeah, sure, I can see that. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I think it's a couple of different things. I think it's because of his injury history. That's going to play into this. And also, when you see the young players, Paulson Adebo, Alontae Taylor, and now you've drafted Kool-Aid McKinstry, I think that the fans can see, okay, you've got 2 young players that have they been the most consistent? No, but they're young football players. They have shown enough to be able to make you feel okay about trading Marshon Lattimore, and then you draft this player again that a lot of the Saints fan base is going to know because he played for Alabama and Kool-Aid McKinstry, and I think you feel good about those 3 players. And then you've got Tyron to kind of be the veteran leader in the DB room. And Howden was such a surprise in the 5th round a year ago from Minnesota. And so I think that you feel so good about the room, even if you don't have Lattimore. And then you have so many other positions, certainly the offensive line, where you need help right now. And you need that help more than you need it in the DB room. And so I think Saints fans would be okay with it just because of the circumstance of it.
Yeah, and look, this is actually a pretty good place, I feel like, for Saints fans to be in, because if Marshon Lattimore is not traded, great, right? You have one of the better cornerback rooms in the entire NFL. If he is traded, it's okay because you get some resources and potentially some immediate help if you do like a line swap. And your secondary still, I think, will be pretty damn good. So this is not we must move him at all costs. It is just to say that the door is definitely still open, and maybe even Lattimore himself is itching to get out a bit if the offer is right. But either way, I feel like the Saints are in a pretty good spot here in terms of they can keep him, they can trade him, and both have benefits.
And so for the Texans, like, it makes sense as well. Jeff Okudah is the other. Remember him from Ohio State. He was the top 3 pick maybe by Detroit, and he's been a couple of different places as well. And so the Texans have former first-round picks that have not really lived up to that, not even at all, actually, to their first-round tag in the NFL. So they've got some talented players, but they certainly would love to slot Marshon Lattimore right next to Derek Stingley, as T-Bob laid out there. So it makes sense for the Texans. Also the Chiefs, I mean, you get rid of Snead, so it makes sense for them as well. But it feels like the Texans, that one has a little bit longer legs than the Chiefs rumor.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Because, again, the Chiefs don't need to go all in the same way that the Texans do, because the Chiefs have proven they can kind of craft that team a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
And Patrick Mahomes is going to get them to the Super Bowl.
Even though their corner situation,
what's that?
Their corner situation after trading Snead is not great in Kansas City.
No, I know, but I mean, they're kind of,
yes, I agree.
They're playing that game that you sometimes see teams play when they have an elite quarterback, in which they kind of see what they can get away with. Like we talked about Drew Brees yesterday, how the Saints just basically stopped paying attention to interior offensive line for years and years. And then they were like, okay, actually, this is screwing us up. We have to trade Jimmy Graham for Max Unger. And so I maybe they still go out and try to get some quarterback help in Kansas City, and they would definitely love to with Marshon, but maybe they also feel like we got Mahomes at the end of the day, which is probably flawed, because L'Jarius Sneed was incredible.
Yeah.
During the playoff run, and he's been incredible the entire time, but really everybody saw it on the big stage. But I just feel like the Texans are definitely feeling that ticking time of, okay, CJ Stroud, we got 3 more years before it's renegotiation time, and we have to do everything we can to maximize our opportunity in those 3 years. Whereas the Chiefs are like, we have Pat Mahomes for 10 more, 50 more, who knows? And we can be we don't have to be as desperate and quick.
If the Saints traded with Kansas City and they bring back Jawan Taylor like a swap for an offensive lineman, because you need so much help there, let's not forget Jawan Taylor led the NFL in penalties, and it wasn't even remotely close. In fact, I think he set the NFL record for penalties by a single player. And so if that happens, this will be a horrible idea by the Saints. And so we're in favor of trading with the Texans for a player.
I don't need that, bro.
Yeah, no. I mean, this is a player that had more false starts and holding calls than any player in NFL history. He had times in Jacksonville where he was good. Don't do that. Just don't do that, and it'll be okay.
Wow, just amazing black and gold takes right there, Jake.
I don't think I've ever heard any takes that are better than the two guys that just gave you that take.
And you can keep getting them by going ahead and liking, subscribing, ringing the bell to get notifications when we post. Have a great day. We'll see you on the next OTB Saints.